Those of you who have visited a government office often come back with an image which describes these words: bureaucracy, which is thick-skinned, rule-bound, unhelpful, wooden-headed, insensitive, and rigid. When I joined civil services way back in 1983, that's 40 years ago, I was acutely aware of these attributes. And as any 23 years old, I was hardly 23 when I joined, I thought I could change the system and the world. Did I succeed? How did I try to address these issues? Is there a space for empathy in any of this? Not merely in a government office, in governance as such. Is there a place for empathy in governance? In a way, I chose empathy as an antidote to this. During my initial years, I was acutely aware that many of our colleagues have become thick-skinned. This is the cartoon which I made in the initial years, which shows a bureaucrat after 25 years in service has become like a rhinoceros. Wife is greeting him saying that you have completed 25 years of service. I was determined not to become like this. But how do I achieve this? Is it possible at all in government? Or in what way you can make a change in the system? That is where, of course, the skin is not the only part which gets affected. Many of our colleagues also lose the spine as they go along. That's why the spineless bureaucracy. I was again, you would have seen many such occasions. I was keen to guard against these pitfalls, these occupational hazards, if you may, of bureaucracy. So I will walk you through 40 years of my journey, my personal and professional journey in fighting against the system, bashing on regardless against these attributes of the bureaucracy or governance in general. How did I do it? How did I achieve it? In fact, by a fortuitous chance, I got an opportunity to train senior bureaucrats when they were allotted to the institute that I was heading during the last 4 years of my journey, 4 years before my retirement. Who are these people? These are the new recruits to the All India services. I call them the Indian Civilian Army. They represent 6,000 of the top echelons of Indian bureaucracy, who in turn provide leadership to as many as 3 crore employees all over India in different departments, leaving apart the railways and the armed forces. They were allotted to us for training, and the challenge was to, in the foundation course, to instill not only the tenets of administration to them, but also see that the core values of integrity, honesty, the competence, and of course, empathy is taught to them. It was quite a challenging task. This photograph, incidentally, is near the Statue of Unity. All of you know the tallest statue in the world, Sardar Patel, who is often called the founding father of Indian civil service. The training that we went through as a probationer is another cartoon which I made as a probationer. It had more of academic inputs. It had more of PT, yoga, physical activities being stuffed into your head, ending up making us hollow men, as T.S. Eliot would have described. How do I change this pattern of training? That was the biggest challenge I faced. I said, I'm not going to speak to them about empathy. I'm going to set examples by the way I deal with them, by the way I treat them as probationers. 100 days that they're with me, I should transform them into empathetic, humane administrators. That was my task. But what transpired in this foundation course? What prompted me to do this kind of a module for training goes back to my deep belief that empathy is in fact the key for a public servant. Without that, you really are not meant to be in the public service. You are serving the people, serving the poor. In most of the countries which are governed by the philosophy of welfare state, All of them claim that they are welfare states. There is this focus on citizen-centric policies. Before I go into that, let me briefly try to distinguish, jog you back to all of us know what is sympathy and what is empathy. But there's this very subtle difference between the two which we need to appreciate. While sympathy means feeling pity or feeling sad in somebody's suffering, it's empathy which gives it beyond that. It tells you to act beyond sympathy and to see in what way you can go out of the way to help this person, understanding the person's difficulties. In a way, to quote a very simple example, one of your employees, for instance, comes to you, says that, I have lost somebody from the family in an accident. You say, oh, so how sad, and so I'm sorry about it. That is sympathy. But you say, go beyond that and say, do you want some leave? Can I help you in some way? That is empathy. It's a very simplified example, but there are various layers of empathy which a leader, not only a government servant, leader in any sector, whether it is corporate world, whether it is the government officers, that is where that makes the person a successful leader. That has been my conviction throughout. The first quote which is there is from the famous philosopher Plato. He calls it the highest form of knowledge. What is the lowest form of knowledge? He calls it opinion, judgment. When you are being judgmental about somebody, that is the lowest form of knowledge. Contrast with this with empathy, that is abandoning your own ego and trying to be like him. That is the highest form of knowledge, as Plato calls. But is there a space for this kind of understanding in governance, in our decision-making process? All of you heard the famous bhajan, which was Mahatma's favorite, Peed Parai Jane Re. That in fact encapsulate this concept of you understand somebody else's pain. He is the true Vaishnava, the one who understands. In fact, that is where Gandhi's mantra, which is a code which is given to all the civil servants in their training, it's often called the Mahatma Gandhi's talisman. He says, when you find it difficult to decide, how do I go about this for a policy? He asks the officer or the person concerned to remember the face of the poorest or the weakest person that he or she would have seen. The decision that you're going to take, is it going to help the person or harm the person? That is the talisman, that is the mantra he gave to all the bureaucrats, to all the civil servants. In a way, we try to instill this feeling of empathy in most of the trainees during the foundation course. And throughout my career, that has been the guiding point. So there is a space for empathy, but all of you would say it's easier said than done. Are there cases where you have shown, where you applied it? Is it possible at all? I would run you through very quickly a few anecdotes, few stories, if you may, where I try to practice empathy in a particular way, maybe to begin with at a very personal level, but it had wider social ramifications as it went along. I'm going to show you a few examples of real-life examples of empathy where it has succeeded. First one is about a mountaineer called Shekhar Babu. It was way back in April 2006. He walks into my office, lean, mean-looking young man with bright eyes. He introduces himself that I'm an employee of tourism department. I was about to stop him saying, why are you here? I was heading an infrastructure corporation then. What do you want from me? Something stopped me from asking such rude questions. Then I asked him, what is it that you want from us? He says, I'm a very keen mountaineer. I have climbed all the tallest of the peaks. Now I am attempting to have an expedition of Mount Everest, but I am running short of money. How much money do you want, I asked. He says, 3 lakh rupees, 300,000 rupees. It was not a very big amount then. I said, okay, let me think about it. What can I do? It struck me that we had started a new logo. We had launched a new logo then, which broadly resembled a peak. I said, let me give this logo to him and told him, you display it on top of Mount Everest and bring back a picture, send back a picture, which is a priceless picture. None of us can ever aim to go to Mount Everest. And lo and behold, true to his word, on a few months from his meeting with me, he sent back a mail saying that, yes, I have successfully climbed Mount Everest. And he sent this photo after a few days, which we used extensively in our ad campaigns. The ad campaign was titled, Scaling New Heights, Touching New Goals. It was a successful ad campaign which coincided with a significant growth of the organization. An organization which grew from 65 crores to 5,000 crores in a period of 5 years. All the clusters that you're seeing here were part of that growth story. The financial district, the Gachibowli cluster, the Genome Valley, all these were built up as part of this effort. The Mindspace, the Hyderabad Knowledge City, all these clusters came up as part of this. But I won't attribute this to an impact of empathy by itself, but it had a team where my empathetic dealing with them had inspired them to contribute their might and make it collectively successful. Of course, Shekhar Babu at a different level went ahead. He didn't stop at his own self. He started mountaineering schools where as many as 25,000 kids have been trained for mountaineering, including the youngest girl ever to climb Mount Everest, Malavat Purna. This is a picture of some of the trainees on top of Mount Kilimanjaro, one of the fourth largest peak perhaps in the world, where 43 Indian climbers were there at the same time. This is the record of sorts in the world of mountaineering, it seems. So this is one story which reinforced my belief in empathy as a tool to transform things. There's another interesting story about young sailors who are being trained by another dedicated person, where I happened to be there at the right time, at the right place, and tried to help him. His name is Suhaim Sheikh. He runs a yacht club in the Sanjivaya Park near Hussain Sagar. One evening, he comes to my office. I was the Metropolitan Commissioner at that point in time. He says, I want your jetty, which is lying unutilized. I said, no one has ever asked me for a jetty, which was ramshackle, which was not being put to any use. The park was itself in a bad shape. So I thought for a while. I said, of course, when do you want it? He said, tomorrow. I tried to upstage him by saying, take it tonight. It stumped him, and he knew that this man meant business. So he came back after 2-3 days with the request letter formally written, and we gave it to him. After that, what he's created is history. He has trained over 1,000 girls from the shanty town nearby, the Ambedkar Nagar, the slums, all of them from social welfare schools, all of them from very humble families. He runs now a project called Project Navika. Navika in Hindi means the female sailor. Under this girl, her name is Preeti Kongara, who's at the moment training for the Asian Games. She's the first person from Telangana in 25 years to represent India in Asian Games. For those of you from the IT area, he's now started a water school in Durgam Cheruvu. So for the weekend, the recreation, the IT professionals also can go. So this is an example how an act of empathy can lead to different layers of action and has a multiplier effect. That again reinforces my belief that empathy does work. Empathy pays in many ways that you can imagine. This is Preeti with me some time ago. I will now come to one of the success stories of a trainee of ours. I mentioned about the training that we imparted during foundation course. So I was particularly happy when they kept sharing with us the good work they have done, acts of empathy which they've created. This is a girl called Pragya Jain, who is an Indian police service officer from Punjab. She was posted immediately after training with us as ASP in Barnala district. She found that the frontline workers, the policemen, the policewomen, even the other frontline workers of the municipality and the other departments, they didn't have place to get admitted for quarantine during the COVID time. That's why she thought of converting an abandoned school into a COVID care center for the police and for the other health workers. They ran it for 10 months very successfully. And that's how they have created this facility, which came in handy for all the policemen. This is an act of empathy, a policewoman, police officer, going beyond the call of her duty and starting this. When she shared with me, I said, why are you sharing this with me? She wrote back saying that, I learned this from you. That's what was very satisfying to me. So my training has worked in some extent. That's how I felt vindicated. She also went along and started an initiative called Book Nook, where a reading room and an activity place was created for the children of the policemen in the age group of 4 and 18, where they could sit air-conditioned room. She herself had faced such problems while preparing for the civil service exam. In Delhi, in a small the women's hostel, she didn't have place to read. So that translated into this kind of an initiative where she included the NGOs and started this initiative. I'll end with another story about an artist from a small town called Warangal near Hyderabad, where this artist ran away from home, and because he didn't have enough money to write his exam, I could help him by giving him some funds for the exam, and he came back with a gold medal. Now he is going, the world is his stage. He's in Rome, he's in Palermo, in Venice, and his son started his exhibition last week. So it's an act of empathy which is translated beyond generations. Let me add here that none of these acts of empathy are my personal credit. I would hate to say that I did it. As the saying goes, I am only an instrument. I am a nimitta matra, as the Lord Krishna tells in Gita to Arjun. Eventually, what inspired me to take up this? This is a saying of sage Vyasa, where he says, after writing 18 Puranas and Mahabharata, he was asked, what is the essence of your teaching? He says, Astadasha Puraneshu Vyasasya Vachanadvayam Paropakara Punyaya Papaya Parapidanam. It means, quintessence of my teaching is to see that you help others, that is virtue, that is punya. If you harm others, that is papa. In a simplified matrix of karma, helping another person is the greatest act of punya. So let us all be ignited by this feeling of empathy and make ourselves better human beings, so that the organization that you work in become better, and the offices that you work in become better. Thank you so much for this opportunity.